Well, hello, and the team is still with us, and we want to progress on the challenges because as we speak, the gas situation, I really can't stand. We haven't heard much here from what's going to go on here, but do you mind dealing with that one just as a challenge? Because
no, but
we're going to empower.
I should preface this by saying that I actually am an investor in Crocker.
Oh.
So I do have an interest, but I'll tell you why I have that interest.
Can you explain the company, please?
Crocker Limited. Crocker Limited is the license holder for the gas field out just north.
How do you come involved in that? Is anyone can be involved? Do they come to you and ask you?
Yeah, well, I've never been able to say it before because I've been in politics, and it was appropriate that I didn't get involved in any shape or form. But I'm now an independent person who can speak their mind, and this is my spoken private sector mind, and that is that for a long time there was is the climate change, isn't there? And then we've now moved way beyond that. We now all understand, yes, there's a problem, we've got to solve it, but we must move away from this purist ideological process that we've got, that we've somehow got to flagellate ourselves now and pay a fortune for everything and switch everything off and stop driving cars. Look, it's not going to happen that way. And I think we've had a real big lesson over the summer when the wind stopped blowing and gas consumption went up and Putin quietly sat there laughing all the way back to the Kremlin. And push the price up. Yeah. That misjudgment about, the future is wind farms has been called out because the individual family, every family on the Isle of Man is progressing towards higher energy costs. There are repercussions from not getting the pragmatic or the solutions for how we deal with climate change fully recognised, and part of that is that gas has a future, and there'll be wailing and gnashing of teeth around the island for those who are being purist. Look, for goodness sake, get real. The fact of the matter is gas is going to be around with us for some time. What we have to do is understand how we're going to transit from where we are now to a green agenda. And that process, despite what everybody says, is going to have some significant costs. How do you insulate each individual house? How do you convert over? The point about having our own gas as opposed to somebody else's increasingly expensive gas where people hold us to ransom is that, and I promise you that if this can happen, we're talking about a number of billions of pounds a year capable of coming into the treasury here, which would do the following. Remember what we talked about in section 1 or 2. Yeah. We could invest in a fabulous education system. We could invest in a first-class health system. We could have a absolutely first-class police service. Importantly, we could invest in that conversion process of making sure that we have a full green agenda here, which is going to do nothing else other than reinforce the biosphere nature.
Now, do you want to say anything? Yeah.
Well, astoundingly, I actually agree with you. I think there's no point in trying to think we can just do this all by spending incredible amounts of money to build solar panel. The future for the Isle of Man is more than likely, in terms of our energy dependency, will have to be a second interconnector with the UK at some point. It'll have to happen, or Ireland, and we're going to have to be able to top that up with generating on Ireland. And if we're being practical, for the next 10 to 15 years at least, probably beyond that, the most efficient way for doing that is a centralised power grid, which is using gas. It's one of the clean of the fossil fuels, air fuels, which I know is going to upset people, but it's the way things are going to have to. We have to be pragmatic about this. If you look at there's that report which came out which said here's the three potentials, and one was it'll cost you this much, and then you suddenly get to insane amounts of money, which isn't practical. My only interesting thing is you say about with Crocker, how exactly is this a benefit to the Manx? How does it all work that means that the Manx Treasury is going to get the money? Because does the gas belong to the Isle of Man?
Yeah. If the exploration, the final seismic tests show specifically that there is the availability of gas to the extent that Crocker thinks exists, If that happened by recovery onto the Morecambe Bay grid, then the returns for the Isle of Man would be minimal, negligible, and probably not worth doing. However, if it is fed into the gas pipe and is owned by the Isle of Man, you have to bear in mind that there are other users, because our gas pipe is at the end of a long run, isn't it? And if we do end up with serious supply problems, it's those at the end of the run, like Ireland and ourselves, who would be the big sufferers. So there is a significant interest in us selling or replacing, not selling more, but replacing the expensive gas with more competitively price gas. The ownership of that would sit in the Isle of Man and would give the Isle of Man Exchequer the opportunity to recover very, very significant funds, because the Isle of Man would only use a small proportion of the gas which is recoverable out there. The rest will be sold on as replacement at a more competitive level than the ridiculous price we seem to be heading towards. And that's where the funds would come in.
And just on that, in terms of, I mean, I think this is slightly worrying about going off into a tangent completely, but I just want one final thing on it.
No, let's do a tangent.
How this would work with what they called Islands Group, the Manx gas owners, you know how they own the Channel Islands as well, and they've had a massive row in Jersey over the past 2 years, really, where prices shot up there.
And they've just shot up again, by the way.
And they're going up here again, and they're going up to Jersey.
Yeah. The chickens will come home to roost now. I almost used a Peter Karen thing then.
Are you sure it's not a white elephant coming home to roost in a nest egg? Or?
It will start hitting people hard when these bills start going up. Now, This is an important point. This idea of getting a pragmatic grip of how we deal with climate change has been, I think, coming back to your points, has recently been influenced that somehow a feeling has developed that money's no object for government, because COVID, the Treasury had to expend significant sums of money. And in the UK, the same thing happened. They can print money, we can't. And money, Treasury's money, taxpayers' money, our money is finite. And we can't transition successfully unless we have the funds, and the gas field would give us the funds to transition.
But I just mean more specifically, how would it work alongside Manx Gas? Would it be a competitor shoving them out of the market, or would it be feeding into their system to...
Well, I'm only a shareholder, I'm not a board director, but of course negotiations are bound to be entered into, whereby the Isle of Man consumer continue to enjoy a sensible price as opposed to both electricity, because that's where it comes from, and gas.
Okay, I mean, this is totally sidetracked, which actually is now...
No, it's hugely important.
No, that's why I'm going to carry on with this. Break this one down. Is it going to be fracking? Is it just going to be pushing the thing down? I mean, all these things are now starting. No, they're all raising their head already. Fracking immediately.
The people who say it's fracking are those who are ideologically puritanical about thou shalt not. We will have to, or we won't be able to afford to live. But there isn't fracking involved here. The gas sits in what I would describe, from my amateurish standpoint, a friable rock, a friable condition, and that sits under a lid of a harder rock. So it's captured. And what one has to then do is drill through that to release the gas. It's not a fracking exercise.
Okay. Let's go back to vision now, because obviously we do have to move towards...
It all fits, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So if we move away from that, you need to look at, obviously, how the island competes in the tax world, because this is where... the big thing about Biden's tax plan, looking at it, and when I've seen the detail of it, it doesn't seem that it's going to be something which will actually impact the island massively in terms of how this... They're going after major corporations. They're looking for Amazon and Google. They're not looking for David Cretney. It's with all due respect, moochers were not taking on Amazon. So it's just in terms of that, do you think that the island can sustain as a low tax economy and still get everything that people want out of it?
We shouldn't be over frightened about this world approach to minimum taxation. The problem lies more within ourselves, that if we allow our exchequer to literally burn through available funds, and with the agenda as people perceive it at the moment, not fully understanding the cost implications, that's where we're heading. And so we must remain a competitive. Try to answer your question. We must remain a competitive taxation jurisdiction, but we must ensure at the same time we have all those services in a highly efficient way that we described in an earlier part of this session.
Okay, I just want to go back to gas one more time. You are...
Well, we are talking about it because it's the gas that would fund those services. What's missing at the moment is that the bureaucracy just keeps growing. I mean, it's almost... This is really emotive language, but it's almost cancerous. It just keeps growing. And the political mind must grip this once and for all. And one of the key ways of doing this is to introduce a single legal entity.
And that comes back again to where we were saying earlier about vision, in terms of if you want a government that, let's face it, is somebody, if you want, I think Manx government has this thing where it needs to get smaller. It really needs to get smaller. But it doesn't mean that it can do fewer functions. It can still do the things it does, and things can go out to the private sector. There's nothing wrong with that. At the end of the day, if they're more efficient or they can provide a service, it should be done. But I just think that there's this thing of, for some reason, especially even before COVID, we were seeing it was getting bigger and bigger, and it used to be a big thing. Everyone used to say there's so many people employed by the government, we need to cut this figure, and you can't see, I think part of the problem is you can't see them, because it's not like you see the work gangs on the roads with DOI written on the back of them. They are there, but there's not hundreds of them. So to me, it's just this case of that you need to have a vision for the island, which is that the government can be more efficient and cleverer. And that's the big thing to me, is this clever approach. And I think that in part is where you've got things like, you've got DFE, which has got thousands of different things it's doing. And yet you can't seem to get what is the central focus vision of the Department for Enterprise. We organised the TT and we try to push Bitcoin, except when we don't. And to me, this whole thing is why, like you're saying, the next 2 to 3 weeks are so important. And we say the public can't have a say, but we can all badger our MHKs. We know who they are now. We've just listed them. And if you can do that, and you can see someone who's stepping forward with a vision to say, look, this is what I want the island to be like, and it sounds like this, to me, that's somebody who should be Chief Minister.
Absolutely.
Over someone who's going to go with a programme for government Santa Claus list, which is just going to be, here's everything that I want in my area. I want a new road, and I want to be Minister.
Okay. Yeah. Gas, one more time with you. Kroger, who makes money? Who's renting the seabed? How much are we paying? Who's getting that money? Will it end up...
Those are the sort of details which the company can explain and articulate. I think they have intentionally tried to stay away, as I understand it, as a simple investor, stay away from the election itself. And I hope very much more inclined to come out and articulate the importance of what they're trying to do, the fact that it's not fracking, the fact that it's a major...
But they rent the seabed at goodness knows how much money, because that's what they've been saying in the UK.
No, it wouldn't. The funding for the people of the Isle of Man would come from the recovery of gas as it emerges, and there would be a tax on that will be continuous. Once the gas field was open and working, you turn the on switch, it should deliver gas for between 12 and 15 years, which is exactly the cycle, and then it would cease. Exactly the cycle that we need to get ourselves properly.
But a private company has to be brought in. Your company, the one
it's not my company.
No, but you got interested in it now. You would rent the seabed, which they're talking about. The UK would be.
I don't know the details of the renting of the seabed.
Yeah, but
that would
private company makes the money. You would end up making money because it would be supplied to the Isle of Man government. The Isle of Man government's not going to start drilling.
No, hang on. The government wouldn't be supplied with the gas. The gas would be sold to the gas providers, who would then pass it on to MU. The government. You got it now, Paul?
Am I being stupid? Am I?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, the government would measure the gas units and make a charge on each gas unit, which would then go to the taxpayer.
Okay. So likely to happen? Definitely going to happen?
I believe the gas is there. Listen, nothing until the fat lady sings. You can never be sure. but what I'd like to see happen is far more rational, pragmatic thought about achieving something we're all passionate about, which is a wonderful island with fine services, a respected biosphere, and a future green agenda which we could afford to invest in.
Well, that was an interesting last section, completely different to what I thought we were going to talk about.
Okay.
Thank you very much indeed. Well done again for your election program. If you missed it, it was.
Oh, make sure you if you haven't
fabulous.
seen what's the phrase? Jeff didn't start the fire. For goodness' sake!
Oh, the video itself.
It had me in tux.
Jeff.im.
Brilliant. Who's the lad who's
Jack Divers? That's who co-hosted.
Jack who?
Jack Divers. He's brilliant. He's who co-hosted.
Clever lad.
Well, he's who co-hosted with me on election night for our coverage,
which I heard great things about.
Oh, it was insane. I mean, we did this thing.
I was on the Grumpy Old Man programme.
Well, you were too, weren't you? You did Studio One and you came back to radio.
But, so we took things like, we took Exit Poll and we did away with that. We replaced it with rubber ducks. So
how did you make that work?
So we just threw 4 rubber ducks into Silverdale River, and the first 2 had crossed the line. They're going to be. That was our prediction for.
What was your percentage, by the way?
At one point, we were hitting about 50%. In Russian, we got 100%, and we were very happy with that.
That's funny.
My cats had a very questionable night. They only got 50% in Onken.
How did your cats work then?
Well, I put all the manifestos on the floor, and then put the exact same scoopful of biscuits on each one. Opened the door, and the first 2. It wasn't actually the first 2 they went to, because originally one of them went to James Cherry, had a sniff of the food, didn't quite like it, and voted for Julie Edge instead.
There you go.
It was just
Are they all available still? Are they online?
Oh yeah, it's all on YouTube. And sharing clips as well, and
lovely stuff.
It was a fantastic night. I tell you something, we were really surprised when we looked on Friday. We looked at who was watching this, because we had this original theory. It's going to be my mum, Jack's mum, and maybe somebody's left at 1 and they've gone to sleep. But we actually had viewers from America, we had Canada, we had Saudi Arabia for even one person.
And what's the guy's name who fronted the actual Jeff Didn't Start the Fire?
That's Jack Divers as well. So he's Jack Divers. He's a theatrical.
He was.
Yeah, so there was
a
lot of us wrote the lyrics down, and he twiddled with them as well. And
I almost made the lyrics apparently. I couldn't find the right rhyming words.
I got cancelled. But it was fantastic. It was just this. We literally said to him, we thought this was dead. We weren't going to do the video, and then Emma Cox sent it off to him and said, "Look here, the lyrics. What do you think?" And he went, "Oh, give me a weekend." And he was telling us, he literally turned up at the Wildlife Park and went, "I'm doing a music video. Can I film Kush?" And they let him in to do it. And P.O. Castle, the same sort of, and it's
brilliant. It was well. If you haven't seen it,
okay. Well, anyway, this is the end of this program. Thank you for watching. Hope it's been of interest. And wow, another 5 years before we do it all again as such.
Well, I'll be.
Oh yeah. Thanks for watching.